Well, let's explore the first basic concept, force. As we mentioned, that is one of the biggest mistake in science. What exactly is the force? If an object contains, if we say that an object contains certain amount of force, what exactly it represents within that object? So let's explore this concept using one example here. Force is measured in newtons. Normally, force is measured using the force meter. The spring, fixed spring to some ceiling, and then you need to pull the spring down. So this initially the spring points at zero newtons. This is the force scale, and 0 newtons. And when you pull the spring down here, either it represents 10 newtons, 20, 30 or 40 depending upon how much energy you are expending into the system. If you pull it hard, then suppose it might be pointing to somewhere here. So it means like you pulled with your force 40 newtons. You pulled with a 40 newtons force the spring. See, unless until you are expending energy in pulling the spring, there is no measurement for the force within your hand. So if you want to measure the force, you have to expend certain amount of energy in measuring that force. So force is always associated with energy transfer. Unless there is a transfer of energy from the object to the external system, there is no way to sense the amount of force within that object. So basically, energy transfer from one object to another object is called power. How many joules per second being transferred from one system to another system. So power, when you say power here, when you pull the spring, you might be expending, might not be exactly the same scale. These two scales might not be equal, but I'm giving for an example here. If you expend like 20 joules per second in pulling the spring down, that might be measuring 40 newtons here. So if you pull down still hard, and if you expend more and more energy in pulling the spring pointer might point at 50 newtons, and then at the same time you will be spending more energy from your body in pulling the spring. So always in a system, force is not something independent entity. It's always associated with the power, the system, the power, the energy the system transfers to outside world. So basically what exactly here is happening is force is proportional to the power. That's all. We are in most of the theories we are using force, but the true representation of that process, whatever the force is we are describing, should be represented by power, because power is the only one we see in the system. When you are pulling down the spring, you are expending the energy. Depending upon how much energy you expend in pulling down the spring, if you pull down the spring with less energy, if you expend less energy, it might point to the 10 newtons, and that might be 5 joules per second. So basically, force is nothing. It's an imaginary concept being used for so long time, and it physically doesn't represent anything related to the object. Just in a similar way, we can see this is a water tank, and the force, there might be a lot of force down here. We can't measure the force unless there is an outflow. Force is always proportional to how much water goes out of the system. So how much energy goes out from an entity is exactly the true representation of the force within the body. So how many gallons of water went out of this tank is a true representation of how much force is there down this bottom of this tank. So we need to replace force with the power, because power, wherever we use force, we are not at all representing any energy in the system. We are saying some two forces are acting in some angle, and then we'll have some resultant force, and then we are done with it. We never represent the system in terms of energy. So, but the real aspect, real thing that is happening in the system when two or three forces are interacting is power. How much energy each system transfers to the other system. Let's